This is Sandy Alt reporting from the wild, and this is the audio podcast companion to my blog on Substack. This is episode 26, Conjure Hope. I'll be honest, I don't feel much hope most of the time these days. The headlines sound like rapid-fire air guns sending millions of nails into democracy's coffin. Is that rat-a-tat sound our Constitution's death rattle? Will that incessant hammering at its heart by those driven by hate and greed and complete moral and ethical degradation be fatal? We hear near-constant hate speech sniping over the airwaves.
No King's Rally. We refer to it by its more accurate description, the Hate America Rally.
And across the social media killing fields from our foxhole out here, where we have established a tiny battlefield command station.
The Marxists,
to mount our own small,
the Socialists,
local defense,
the Antifa advocates,
against tyranny,
the anarchists, and the pro-Hamas wing of the far-left Democrat Party.
These are dark times. Last week, I learned that the Idaho Air Force Base, where I spent 4 years of my childhood learning how much I loved the outdoors, the wild, the American West, and all the other stuff you absorb in those tender years before you become a teen, that base that I wandered from one sagebrush arroyo to another on my imaginary horse, in wild young cowgirl freedom, has been given in part to the Qatari Air Force to establish their own air training facility. That U.S. base where I learned to salute the flag with a pledge of allegiance and my hand on my heart, and to love the sound of taps and reveille, and to thrill to the sound of jets taking off from the runway, even to feel the pride of knowing, through my father, some of the people who were piloting them. It's now being handed to rich benefactors of the Trump family by newly installed Trump sycophants in the Department of War, as if it were theirs to give. I take this loss personally, and every member and family member of the military, every American should too. In the newly envisioned Trump military, we're to have no plump generals, no matter how wise, experienced, accomplished, or skillful. No beardos, no people of color, and hopefully no women. But if you want to give a jet to the president and bankroll his son-in-law, you can damn well come on in and make yourself at home on our military bases. Have your own place. Do whatever you like. Qatari Air Force, this land is not our land. This land is now your land. Dark times. As we are speaking of the military, our proud forces are now deployed deep in the war zones of the newly occupied homelands, fighting hard to protect us from our fellow citizens on the streets of American cities, those metropolitan strongholds for democracy that the Trump regime doesn't like. Yes, these are dark times. Things get bleaker for our self-governing republic every day, every hour, every minute. And yet, there is no good reason why we should give up the fight. Not one. And so, I have to remind myself to seek out ways to conjure hope. And today, I have 100 reasons to have hope. A week ago, my husband and I hosted an event at our home for a candidate running for governor of Colorado. Nearly 100 people came. They came with bottles of wine and 6-packs of beer and soda, with home-baked brownies and chicken wings to share, with hearts and minds open and questions and concerns on their lips. They came with their checkbooks and credit cards, ready to support the campaign. They came to defend democracy, to learn and to listen and to lend their strength, whether as volunteers, as word-of-mouth advocates, or as donors of whatever denominations they could manage, to this fine candidate who is willing to stand up and lead. As dire as things are in the headlines, here in my community, and I'm sure elsewhere, people are getting together to counter the corruption and the greed and the Nazism and the inhumanity. Folks across the country are gathering in small neighborhood groups over shared meals, online in virtual groups, in library meeting rooms and community centers, in large groups at area forums and trainings, and coming this Saturday,
No king! No king!
by the millions in No Kings rallies,
No kings! No crowds! The people won't back down! No kings! No
in thousands of towns and cities in the nation, and even beyond the borders of the U.S. So, yes, I have 100 reasons to hold hope after just this one event in my neighborhood. And by the end of this weekend, I hope we will share millions of reasons. We, the people, are gathering. We, the people, are determined. We, the people, are standing for democracy, for freedom from corruption, oligarchy, and inhumanity, for freedom from tyranny. We want no kings.
No king! No king!
In this week, in this movement, in this moment, we are aligned in purpose and passion with the founders of this nation who fought for freedom from the tyranny of a king. We carry in our bloodlines and in our devotion the dedication to the tenets of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution that all persons are created equal and that we are a nation of laws, not of men. As a rampage of evil driven by Project 2025 overtakes and devours our government, I still have ways to conjure hope out of darkness. And so do you.
Think of Ukraine. Think of the citizens of cities violently attacked from the skies, holding classrooms and music concerts and community dinners in the subways. Think of the people robbed of the peace of daily life in a country they loved, now learning en masse to perform triage and basic combat medicine to save one another. Think of the artists and engineers and farmers and librarians training in midwifery, weaponry, and supplies delivery. Think of the ordinary citizens stepping up to organize and reinvent the daily workings of their towns, villages, cities, and schools in response to the ongoing destruction of war. Think of the rapid, innovative transition from civilian manufacturing facilities to drone manufacture and piloting that has given Ukraine a strong foothold in a war against the giant who invades them. This creativity, this transformation, is a conjuring of hope out of darkness. Now, back to within our country, think of those good, democratic-minded candidates who are showing the courage to run and the commitment to serve. Imagine the bravery and the belief that this requires, especially in these dangerous times. They have conjured enough hope to lead, this in spite of immense personal risk and risk to their families. Many of them feel called to this moment and driven by a mission to serve. We need this. We need good leadership now more than ever. We must continue to conjure hope for democracy by actively choosing who will lead.
I draw hope, too, upon the strength and stories of my adoptive tribe. The indigenous people of this country were once enveloped in the bleak blackness of occupation and theft of their lands and riches. White Europeans come Americans sought to decimate them altogether. Yet, they are still here. Their songs and their art, many of their languages and their stories and their culture are still here, still vibrant, still alive. The great American poet and novelist Leslie Marmon Silko from Laguna Pueblo describes this.
The Hamaha, meaning long ago, stories are traditional Pueblo stories that have been told continuously for thousands of years about a time when amazing things were possible.
Even in the darkness, they conjured hope. They believed amazing things were possible, that the long arc of their legacy would endure. They prayed, they practiced, they remembered, they survived, and today they are part of a new bold renaissance of culture and art and environmental stewardship. The inspiration of tribal vitality, in spite of such a horrific genocidal movement, sparks hope in me. And it might spark hope for you, too. When you reach for ways to conjure hope amidst the horrible headlines, think, too, of the wolf and the grizzly, hunted, reviled, pursued, deprived of territory, food sources, safe passages, and protections. States legislate to allow their dens with infant young to be destroyed by grenades and cyanide bombs. Their numbers to be decimated by air rifles fired from helicopters and by hunters in droves of off-road machines racing en masse to gun down whole packs. Somehow, out of life's love for itself, some of them have grown clever and resourceful enough to still survive even this. I conjure the tiniest spark of hope from this. I will not let the light of this hope die. They are still here. There is still time. If we are clever and resourceful, if we are courageous and committed, if we are dedicated and determined, we can find ways to more than survive. We can find ways to conjure hope, even in darkness, so that we can sustain our defense of democracy and stand together to triumph.
Though this regime is moving at breakneck speed to demolish all good and take all that is worthwhile, we can summon hope from the mere fact that there are so many of us. There are millions more of us, we the people, than there are oligarchs and corrupted people in their thrall. There are people who grow food, who repair roads, who teach schools, who practice medicine, who work machinery, who drive trucks, who repair things from roofs to refrigerators, who work in banks and factories, in feedlots and art galleries, in service industries and construction, in hospitals and credit unions, in hardware stores, markets, and people who are writing and painting and dancing and sculpting, people who are raising children and grandchildren, caring for their elders and mentoring youth, maintaining public lands and curating art, people who are preserving history and planning communities for the future. We are the ones working day by day, holding the country together with our love and our labor. And we are a force to be reckoned with when we unite in peace to say there will be no kings in America.
No king!
We can invoke hope with the strength in our numbers, and there are also more tools at our disposal as mere citizens, which we can consider beyond this week. Together, we can identify new and the best still serving good leaders and support them now. We must not wait to do this work. We need leaders with strength, integrity, and loyalty in these extraordinary times. With new emerging leaders, we can prepare for continued self-governance under the Constitution should free and fair elections be sabotaged or denied by creating shadow governments now. Consider this advice from American historian Timothy Snyder in his blog Thinking About on Substack for shadow cabinets as a template for any level of self-governance that could be compromised by the regime in power or the failure to provide free and fair elections.
We face the unusual situation of a government, a president, and his cabinet who seem indifferent to the rule of law itself. By beginning from the principle that we have a government of laws, not men, a shadow cabinet would reinforce the American way of politics.
We can conjure hope out of our love of country. Our ability to imagine the life the founders dreamed of when they wrote the Declaration of Independence and forged the first draft of the Constitution. We can levitate hope right out of our recent history when a generation of Americans and those from other countries went to war to save the world from fascism and triumphed through innovation, determination, sacrifice, and fidelity to the principles of freedom and equality. I am by no means an optimist. And yet, I have 100 reasons to have hope this week. And I am not lacking in imagination. I can envision ways we can gather together in groups small and large to conjure hope out of darkness. And I'm enough of a dreamer to believe that you can too. Environmentalist Terry Tempest Williams writes,
In the open space of democracy, we are listening, ears alert. We are watching, eyes open, registering the patterns and possibilities for engagement. Some acts are private, some are public. Our oscillations between local, national, and global gestures map the full range of our movement. Our strength lies in our imagination and paying attention to what sustains life rather than what destroys it.
There are those who might fail to imagine a way forward because they do not care. This apathy comes from distrust, cynicism, and powerlessness. We can only cure this by conjuring the power of hope. There are those who fail to imagine because of fear. We can take inspiration from our ancestors, from the indigenous people of this continent, from the survivor species in what is left of the wild, and from those around us showing bravery. The dream of our founders was a nation free of tyranny from a king. And they created this democracy out of that dream, a borrowed blueprint from the Iroquois Confederacy and the thoughts and ideas of the best thinkers of their time. If they could conjure up democracy out of virtue, spirit, and intellect in their uncertain times, we can surely conjure hope out of the growing darkness we are experiencing now and dream up a way back onto its noble path. I often take advantage of the energy of my anger at the unending indignities and indecencies of this corrupt regime to catapult me into action. I am always telling myself, do something. This inevitably leads me to create, to organize, to engage in defense of democracy. I turn to friends, to music, to poetry and great literature for inspiration, and I carry out the orders that the character of Mama Anna in the Wild Mystery series demands of my sleuth Jamaica. Now go and do. And so, when I heard about the gift of a military base, one that just happened to also be a magical place from my childhood, to the Qatari military, a theft of American land, and a compromise of our national security, I felt the anger and the sadness mixing up a terrible mental and emotional poison that might have overwhelmed me. And I sat down instead to write to you about hope. I conjured again the hope from the 100 people who came to my house with open hearts and minds and arms full of edibles and potables to share, determined to help elect a good leader. I conjured hope from the stories my adopted Tiwa family told me of surviving Indian boarding schools, going on to have families, serve in the military, get advanced education, and bring knowledge and compassion home to the tribe from their experience, their strength, and their hope. I conjured hope from the young wolf cub we're raising, a wild thing working hard to comprehend the unfamiliar and bizarre world he's been thrust into, while also thriving on the love and care and tending of a handful of dedicated devotees committed to his survival. I conjured hope from my neighbors who have made room again in their homes, for adult children who have lost their jobs, and for neighbors who work for the government but now are looking for new employment with hope. Everywhere I look, if I take the time, there is something to help me conjure hope. So this week, I will go and do and be a small voice, encouraging anyone within earshot to conjure hope. Another quote from Terry Tempest Williams.
I do not believe we can look for leadership beyond ourselves. I do not believe we can wait for someone or something to save us from our global predicaments and obligations. I need to look in the mirror and ask this of myself. If I am committed to seeing the direction of our country change, how must I change myself?
I have long known the answer to that question for myself. I would love to hear your comments about that answer for you. I feel lucky that I have a vibrant enough imagination to envision a world where democracy achieves its aspirations for equality and justice. And not just for the two-legged citizens, but for the wild, for the animal life, for the rivers and the mountains, and for the very planet, and for the stars. Toward this dream, I work. I create. I hope. As John Lennon said, "You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one." This has been Sandy Alt reporting from the wild. Every week or so, I publish a written blog on Substack, and then, a few days after, I produce a podcast version like this one. You can read and subscribe to the companion blog to this podcast at sandyalt.substack.com. You can see a recent photo of our wolf cub companion, Zuni, there. He's really growing fast. I've used 2 quotes from The Open Space of Democracy by Terry Tempest Williams here, and quoted the brilliant Leslie Marmon Silko. I also quoted American historian Timothy Snyder from his blog, Thinking About. These are writers you must read. And I used one beautiful line from the song Imagine by John Lennon. I want to thank T. Kearns for his inspiring photo of the lunar eclipse and for being the voice of Timothy Snyder. And thanks, too, to the great voiceover artist Michael Clarkson and the prodigious podcaster Channy Peters for lending their voices to this episode. And I could never do this so well if it weren't for my two colleagues on my production team, Teresa Douse-Weber and Eric Brody, who helped me refine this script. Eric writes the Decency and Sense publication on Substack. Check it out. And if you want more stories from the wild, look for my Wild Mystery series in book, audiobook, and ebook. You can start with any book in the series and go wild.